I realized there's this huge gap between where some women are and starting financial planning. And so that's where PowHERhouse was created, actually. It stemmed from all of the things I learned through creating Wilcox Financial Group. And so I knew that we could serve in a much better, more meaningful way and fill that gap. And so we created this money coaching program. And, I really liken it to the boot camp to get you ready for financial planning, where we work on your mindset, your behaviors, all of the things that you have surrounding money, whether it is things that you're stuck on from the past that you can't get over, whether it's confidence that you're needing to build, and just rewiring your brain in terms of how you're thinking about money so that you can build consistencies and discipline in your life and eliminate a lot of that self-sabotaging behavior that we sometimes have, as well as building and understanding your cash flow and where your money is going. I mean, how many of us make a lot of money and we have no idea where it goes, and in starting to just get intentional in understanding the value of putting your money where your goals are, instead of maybe doing it at a clip where it's for somebody else and not towards something that you really want.
I love how you talk about putting money where your goals are. And I'm also excited because we talk a lot about mindset and habits on the show. And, also one of the things that is something that I'm really wanting to work on for people and listening to the show is the word mistakes and how we need to see them as learning opportunities. And one of the things that I really noticed when you're addressing women is, you don't put any judgment. But I'm curious, what was one of your biggest learning mistakes when it came to money?
Well, I had so many. And I think that's why we stress the no judgment thing, because there's always that massive fear around they're going to judge me and I'm so shameful of where I am. But, where I come from, the team comes from, we've all fell on our face a few times. We've all done so many ridiculous things. And so I guess the first or earliest mistake that I made was feeling like I had to buy things to impress people, feeling like I had to fill my closet with a bazillion suits and 200 pairs of shoes, and 200 pairs of shoes is not an embellishment, right? I came from being very poor and not having any money to making decent money. And I wanted my friends and I wanted my family so desperately to think I'm successful. I was like begging for that approval and for them to think I made it. I always felt like so suppressed. And so, it took me a long time to learn that it's a waste of money to put your money toward a belief you want somebody else to have versus the one you have in yourself. And it also didn't feel in alignment with who I wanted to become and what I was talking about. And so that was in my 20s, my very early 20s. And it took me a few years to be self-aware of that habit. And it took a lot of confidence building, I think, in coming to the conclusion that that was not healthy, but also not putting my money where my goals really were. So that was probably the first adult career money mistake that I had.
And that's not uncommon. I think of my money
Yeah.
mistakes, and when you're in your 20s, you often have some insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
Or putting yourself out there for probably the first time ever independently, and you want to impress people. So, for those of you who are listening who might be in your 20s, just be prepared that to put your money where your goals are. And I love how Nicolle's emphasizing that. What's really interesting and intriguing is what makes money intimidating to people.
Well, I think it's a layer of things. So it is the belief that we've never had any. So if we get it, what are we going to do with it? And what if we make a mistake? What if we do the wrong thing? And so there's that, because as much as we have a fear of failing, we have a fear of success. And sometimes we just don't realize it. So we can make money, but a lot of times it's difficult to keep it. So that sometimes is intimidating. And it's also intimidating to ask for help surrounding money, because money brings up emotions we didn't know existed. It's extremely vulnerable. And if we ask for help, we may hear things we don't want to hear, and we may be told things that are going to be uncomfortable or provoke some kind of change. And sometimes for us, and being human, that's hard to face. And so that's extremely intimidating to think about that, especially if there are a lot of other things surrounding what it is that you're about to bring up. Maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation with your partner, or something you know that you need to address. Or maybe you worked yourself up for it to be such a bigger problem than what it really is, because most of the time it's not that big of a deal. Everything's figure outable. And so, that's certainly a few parts of it. And then the next is that there's so much information out there. There's so much jargon out there. And in the financial industry, it's so common for many men, to talk at you or talk down at you and purposefully confuse you so that you don't ask questions. I saw it so much growing up in the industry, and it's an ego thing, I think, a lot of the time. And so that in itself is intimidating, when you're feeling already insecure, and then someone talks down at you versus alongside with you in language that you can really digest. So there's just so many different things, and a lot of stories that surround that.
Yeah. When people ask the question, they're coming from a place of curiosity. And, it's sad to think that people are saying, talking down to you. And the first thing that came to my mind when you said that is, what do you mean you don't know? Why are you asking this question?
Right.
We wouldn't be asking if we knew the answer. And for women to feel comfortable with asking and take pride that they're being vulnerable, they're being brave by asking to gain the knowledge that they need. And, when you talked about emotions of money, I find it fascinating when, you can walk through someone's house and you can see what's important to them. You can see where they invest in themselves, whether it be, I'm guilty of a library of books. I do have, a few things in the closet. I don't have 200 pairs of shoes, but thinking about where those emotions are tied to, and sometimes, those shoes or extra outfits are that filling a void for some people into something that's missing in their lives. So I'd love to hear how you help women examine those emotions of money.
It's a lot of question asking, and allowing them to expand their thought around something they've been avoiding, right? Because there's always a meaning behind it. You're so right. Like, we are filling a void, and it's as much as paying attention to, if you need to get out of the house because you can't be there anymore, where do you go? Do you go to the gym? Do you go for a walk? Or do you go to Target and walk around and buy stuff? A lot of us go to Target and walk around and buy stuff because we feel like we're being productive, right? We're doing an errand, we're buying something, we're coming home with something. So there's like that gratification. But often it's the process of doing that is filling the void of not being happy at home, or feeling overwhelmed because your kids are all over you and your husband's nagging you and you're just trying to get work done, but because you work from home, you're not really working, right? Or whatever the case may be. And so it's paying attention to the habits that are showing up in your life that aren't serving you, and asking yourself why. We don't do that enough. We don't pay attention to the things that don't serve us. We pay a lot of attention to the expectations of that people have of us, and in making sure that we are pleasing them and filling those expectations. But when it comes to looking inward and asking, am I really showing up in a way that's in total alignment with not only who I'm becoming, but how I feel, and how I want to feel feel. And if there's incongruencies there, that's where I dive in, right? And ask them, where can we start to tweak or pivot or ensure that the things that you do every day are going to reflect the goals that you just wrote down on paper, right? Because there's that, famous saying, I don't know where it came from, is that what you do every day matters so much more than what you do once in a while. But how often do we pay attention to what we do every day? Not very, right? And so it's looking at that, and reverse engineering from there.
And it's time to take the ordinary and making it extraordinary. Because when we start to pay attention to those habits, those ways we show up, then we can start. It starts with awareness, and alignment. And then there comes in that coaching for that accountability to really show up and be that person where you, again, going back to putting your money where your goals are and being in alignment with your values. What is the most common reason that women let their financial, and I know there's men listening to us as well, so this can pertain to you as well, that they let their financial future fall along the wayside? What is the most common reason?
It's procrastination and fear. Truly, we procrastinate around this because it is uncomfortable, it's unknown, and so we avoid it, and I want to be, clear with something too, is procrastination is not being lazy. So don't think that of yourself. It's avoiding something you're afraid of. It's avoiding a pain or a discomfort. And we procrastinate on that because it is either overwhelming, intimidating, we're afraid of what we're going to hear, or we don't want to have to change what we're doing right now because that might be uncomfortable. And oftentimes we say to ourselves, well, I'm just really ashamed of where I am, and so I'm going to get better at this and then get help next year, right? And we all know that you're going to be in the same spot or a worse spot next year. And so it's really, getting over, I think, that initial fear or procrastination of this, and knowing that any action is better action. And especially when it comes to money and finances, starting today is so much more important than delaying that. Everything counts.
Yeah. And when you think that women make the majority of the financial decisions in the household, and majority of purchases are emotion driven, it is really important for women to really get a handle on the finances, get more familiar with the jargon, so that they can really, as you call, own your future. Can you tell us more about the importance of that personal vision, that owning the future and putting it down on paper?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that if you were to take time and really give it respect, right? Maybe block 2-3 hours and start to think about who you're becoming, where you want to go, what you want to achieve, and what that really looks like, not only with your business that you're building or your career or professional goals, but personally, right? How do you want to feel around your family, your friends, your kids, and yourself, like your own personal mental health and your physical health and everything that you're doing? We are building these empires or crushing our careers because we have this deeper meaning most of the time to want to feel some kind of freedom, the ability to do what we want, when we want, with who we want, and usually that's outside of the business. And so that personal why is going to fuel your ambitions to grow your business or whatever the case may be. And so if you are able to allow yourself the time to write down that vision, but then anchor it with a why, right? So I do this all the time with my coaching clients, my financial planning clients, when they say like, well, I want to save 100K this year. Why? Like, why do you want to save 100K this year? How are you going to feel? And what is that going to get you? Because if you don't think about why you throw that number out there, the likeliness of you actually achieving it is really, really low, because you're not going to have that understanding of why it's important when things get difficult or challenging. And so what happens without that is when stuff starts to suck, you fall back on your ordinary habit and you stop because you forget. It's like doing that vision board where you only put the pretty pictures on the board, but you don't think about why they're important. And so, 2 weeks into the year, you're like, oh, well, that, pair of shoes up there, that house doesn't really matter because this is hard, right? and you go back. So it's thinking about what you want, who you're becoming, but then why, most importantly, that you want it and how you're going to feel when you get there. So it's important enough to get you through those really hard times, because you can be in love with what you're doing, but you're not going to love every day, right? That's completely unrealistic. I love what I do. I love my friends and my family, but there are days where I want to throw my hands in the air and say I quit, in business. But at the end of the day, I keep going. I keep showing up because I have this crystal clear vision of what that's going to look like in the future. And so if you do that on any level with your goals, it's going to be so much easier to save every day, to spend less on the crap that doesn't matter, to maybe start a fund so that you can have generational wealth. I mean, there's just so many different ways that you can go with it. But if you don't give yourself the time and respect to think about you and what you want, it's going to be very difficult to make that life that you dream about happen in reality.
Yeah. And it's so important to have an emotional connection to your goals. And that's why that it's deep enough to motivate you to have that internal driver within you. So money is often can be seen as a source of stress for people. How do you change how women think and feel about their money?
It is, it's a lot of getting them to change their perspective, right? So, and a lot of women actually aren't motivated by money because when you say, oh, you're just going to make more, that doesn't light a lot of women up. If you say, well, you can take your kids to Disney and you can give them this experience and you'll be able to take care of your mother, that lights them up. And so I think a lot of the time it's actually just converting some of the language that you're using or telling yourself. And, I actually had this conversation with a client earlier today, and she's an online coach, and she's like, I just don't care about money. She's like, I've got enough. I know I want these things, but every time money hits my bank account, I just take from it because I need something else to motivate me. And so what we ended up doing is we changed her accounts to, her savings account now is her independence fund because she wants a divorce. So she's got to work towards that. She's in a very toxic relationship. So, she's got her independence fund, her future home fund, her taking her kids to Disney. And we just changed the titles. So that way, when she's going to take from that account, she's actually seeing physically that she is taking from her future independence fund. And that feels different, right? It feels a lot different when you're reminding yourself of that. And it's a lot more difficult to rob from your savings to buy something that doesn't really matter. And it helps you realign. So a lot of the time it's, sometimes those little games that we play, but truly it's just changing your focus. It's having you think about it in a different way and practicing that. It's all about progress when it comes to money and planning and for your future. You're not going to be perfect right away. But if you can build on that progress and make those steps over time, you're going to feel so much more confident about everything that you're doing.
And that's so powerful. Just hearing it in my mind going, I'm taking out of my independence fund. I'm taking away from my freedom. And I'm like, oh, it feels like somebody punched you in the gut. And I was like, oh, I would be like, no, I'm not touching that. Is there another fund? I love that, changing the label. But of course, wherever our focus is, that's where our attention and energy goes to. So if you have that thought of taking away from your freedom, taking away from your independence, taking away from the chance to take your kids to Disney, I'm like, wow, that makes you think twice.